When we look at the Andaman and Nicobar Islands today, the first thing we usually see is the brutal British Kalapani, a prison defined by arched cells and exile. But starting the timeline with the British ignores tens of thousands of years of human history. These islands were home to Negrito and Mongoloid tribes who maintained isolated sovereignty millennia before a European ship ever touched the water. These tribes occupied a geopolitical goldmine. The archipelagos sit exactly at the mouth of the Strait of Malacca, a natural choke point for the global trade routes connecting India to East Asia. Defensive native inhabitants and jagged coral reefs created a barrier that early outsiders found impossible to cross. The isolation was so complete that explorers like Marco Polo returned with tales of dog-headed cannibals. This environment transformed a trade hub into an impenetrable fortress. The real story is about who finally possessed the naval reach to claim it. In the 11th century, the Chola dynasty became the first mainland power to integrate these islands into a deep-sea military strategy. Emperor Rajendra Chola I formally annexed the Nicobars, which he called Ma Nakavaram, turning the archipelago into a forward staging base for his navy. From this island base, he projected military power across the ocean, launching a preemptive strike against the Srivijaya Empire in modern-day Indonesia. The Cholas demonstrated these islands were effective strategic springboards for projecting authority across the Indian Ocean. By the 17th century, a new threat appeared. Portuguese, Dutch, and British ships were increasingly aggressive along the Indian coast. While most mainland rulers focused on land borders, Chhatrapati Shivaji, the father of the Indian Navy, looked toward the open sea. Shivaji established naval intelligence watchposts on the Andaman Islands. These stations tracked the movements of foreign European galleons before they could reach the mainland. Securing the subcontinent meant controlling the deep waters of the Indian Ocean, shifting the defense of India far beyond its coastline. Admiral Kanhoji Angre expanded this reach, moving Maratha naval operations from mainland sea forts like this one out to the archipelagos. Angre's fleet utilized local Koli fishermen who understood the treacherous reefs, turning the islands into an operational port for intercepting European merchantmen. As Maratha dominance declined, European powers tried to seize the islands. This antique chart reveals competing claims as the Danish and Austrians established colonies like New Denmark. These settlements were disasters. Malaria outbreaks and constant indigenous resistance wiped them out repeatedly. While European colonies collapsed under the weight of unfamiliar ecosystems, Indian empires sustained their presence by integrating local knowledge of the reefs and seasonal cycles into their naval strategy. In 1789, the dynamic changed. To combat shipwrecks and French naval power, the British East India Company sent Lieutenant Archibald Blair to map the islands. Blair established the first small colonial footprint at Chatham Island, the beginning of a permanent British occupation. Disease forced the British to abandon this first attempt in 1796, but the maps were already finished. The ancient seal of isolation was broken. Blair's hydrographic surveys provided the data the British needed to return in the 1850s to build a massive, permanent penal colony. The history of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands is a record of profound indigenous survival and the sophisticated blue water naval mastery of Indian empires like the Marathas.